Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Red Sox Weekly. I'm Ashish Sharma with Brian Roach, and I think I say this every week, but I think this week it's especially true. We have a jam-packed show here today. A lot to talk about. A lot has happened this week, and let's just start right at the top, Brian, with the big news. Xander Boagerts will get the call tonight in San Francisco. Whether or not he is in the lineup tonight is yet to be seen, but this kid will be making his major league debut, if not tonight, very soon.
Yeah, I mean, this was bound to happen. They're probably trying to get his feet wet, seeing if they could bring him on the 25-man roster once the playoff starts. He was gonna get called up sometime this season. It was only a matter of time. He's been great at Double A and Triple A. Has a combined 297 average with 15 home runs and pretty sizable. I think he has like 69, like 65 to 75 RBI. So.
I'm hoping that Xander Bogaerts will inject some energy into this slumping team. Obviously, the Red Sox have had a terrible month of August so far. They have been losing production from a ton of different players that we'll get into. I'm hoping that one thing that we were kind of talking about earlier was that with Xander Bogaerts, he can play a lot of different positions: shortstop, third base, and we'll get to Will Middlebrooks. He's been fantastic, so I don't take him out of the lineup. I think if Xander Bogaerts is in the lineup tonight, it'll be at shortstop for Stephen Drew. And, this guy has been getting hyped up by the Red Sox, and I really hope he does live up to the hype. I've seen some of his highlights in the minors. He looks good. He was hitting 284 in AAA. And, I have some of his stats here. As you mentioned, Brian, in 60 games at that level, 284 average, 822 OPS, 9 homers, 11 doubles, and 32 RBI. So, I'm hoping that if he can come up, he can make an instant splash because this team is really sputtering right now.
Yeah, I mean they've been playing like 500 baseball for the last couple weeks now, and it's kind of concerning since the Rays are starting to play well again after their little skid. So it's only one game lead in the division. So it's going to be interesting to see how they'll do with adversity, basically with everything that's going on with what happened last night. Losing 3 out of 4 to Kansas City to pitchers who were pitching well, not pitching well anymore, and pitchers that were pitching that aren't pitching well, starting to pitch well, like Lester's trying to find a rhythm, PV's off and on. I hope Dempster is put into the bullpen because his last 7 starts he has a 7 ERA, so something needs to happen there, but.
Yeah, no, it's been a horrible month as we mentioned. 8-9 so far in 17 games. They're 4-6 on this past road trip that they just got back from. Now they're just after a quick 3-game homestand against the Yankees. They're back out on the road again for a West Coast swing. As you mentioned, Tampa Bay is a game back, so this is obviously becoming a little bit concerning at this point. I would hesitate to use the word panic yet. I think it's a little premature, but I'm certainly concerned. And, going back to Xander Bogaerts, I think it's about time. I was expecting this kid to be up at least by September. Obviously, we're about a week and a half away from that. And, he's already up here, and I'm glad to see that, and I want to see him get some playing time. But obviously, a lot of roster moves have been made in the last 24 hours to allow for not only Xander Bogaerts, for some other options that the Red Sox have now. I believe you have a list of all these moves.
Yeah, they're probably going to happen around game time, but David Ross is supposed to be activated from the 60-day DL, and Bogarts is supposed to be added to the 40-man roster in order to get called up. So they're transferring both Bailey and Buchholz onto the 60-day DL. Buchholz still has a couple weeks before he'll even be activated, so it makes sense to put him on the 60-day DL to free up that 40-man roster spot. And the Red Sox also optioned Ruby De La Rosa, Ryan Lavarnway, and Brock Holt. So they freed up a lot of room on this on the 25-man roster also. So.
No, I think the roster at the major league level was inflated with a lot of, they're talented individuals, but inflated with a lot of minor league guys that I don't think are quite yet ready to produce and contribute on a daily basis, which is why I think they sent a lot of these guys back down. Ryan Lavarnway was kind of heating up a little bit towards the end there, but really didn't give you all that much in the time that he was up. And David Ross, as we'll talk about later in the show, is expected to be activated later today. So it makes sense. But kind of switching gears here, Brian, I do want to talk about last night's game, the series finale against the Yankees. Alex Rodriguez in his first at bat in the second inning, drilled by Ryan Dempster. He was thrown at 3 times. The first pitch went behind him. Then Dempster came back inside twice before finally hitting him in the shoulder. What'd you think about this?
The first call fine, but the second time you go after him, like right at the rib cage, um, it's clear intent. I mean, John
Right.
Farrell, what he said he was trying to initiate the fastball inside, like
Yeah.
because A-Rod leans over the plate, and when I heard it live, like Farrell's interview on ESPN, I was like, he hesitated, like he was thinking on his feet, like trying to figure out what to
Mm.
say. So
Yeah, no, it was also
I don't even
equally
know.
interesting. Yeah, no, it was equally interesting to see what Aaron had to say after the game. And by the way, he got his
Yeah.
revenge. He did homer off Dempster later in the game. But it was interesting in his post-game remarks. He said, quote, I had 15 guys tell me to hit a bleeping bomb and walk it off. And that was Aaron after. And he injected some comic relief when someone asked if he felt Ryan Dempster should get a suspension for what he did, and he said, I'm the wrong guy to be talking about suspensions. I got a good attorney, though, so I thought that was pretty funny. Very interesting that he
Hmm.
said that. He has a sense of humor about what's going on with him. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's absolutely no doubt that Ryan Dempster threw at A-Rod. I mean, that first pitch, it didn't get away from him. That was intentional, but absolutely. And then you came back and he hit him. Both benches emptied, both bullpens emptied. Luckily, there was really no congregation at the mound. Everyone just came out and went back in. I was a little surprised, though, that the Yankees didn't retaliate in this game. I thought CC Sabathia for sure would, but Brian O'Nora warned both benches immediately, and that really took away any chance that CC had to retaliate because he'd be tossed right away. So it was really interesting to see Girardi's reaction when Joe Girardi came out and he got ejected because he felt Ryan Dempster should have been ejected. It was just one of
Yeah.
those classic Red Sox-Yankees games that we haven't really seen in a while.
Yeah, it was good to heat up the rivalry. I mean, they have 6 games left against each other. One series at Yankee Stadium and one series at Fenway. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next series pan out. If A-Rod's there, if A-Rod's not there, if Dempster's starting, if Dempster's not starting. I mean, Lackey had some interesting things to say too about A-Rod, and I
Hmm.
thought Lackey would be the guy to hit him. But think since Lackey said those things, and if he did hit him, he would be immediately ejected.
Hmm.
So Dempster was doing like the dirty work basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it would have been better if he hit him on the first pitch, and then everything's like out in the open. I mean, I don't think the hit pitch caused the Yankees to rally. I mean, maybe like since it was kind of a dirty play that the Yankees were all like, let's win this so that we're closer to a wild card spot. They're 6 games out still, but
Yeah, no, it's been interesting, Brian. Obviously, Dempster's actions last night have received a lot of mixed emotions and mixed reaction from fans and sports writers alike. Nick Cafardo actually criticized the move, saying, that was Bush League. He shouldn't have done it. It's just it's putting your own personal vendetta
mhm,
into something that is just, you're trying to win a ball game. You're not trying to send a message. And if you are, you already did that. You threw behind him.
yeah,
Personally, I loved it, and maybe it's just because I despise A-Rod. But before the show, you and I were talking about how this might not even have to do with baseball. This might have to do with the fact that Ryan Dempster was pissed at the fact that A-Rod didn't show up for one of his charity events or something like that.
yeah. He
So
had
if
like a
that's the
charity
case,
event in Detroit, so and then A-Rod was supposed to come, but didn't go or something like that. So
then what the hell? Like, what? Then why are you hitting him for that? If it's a
mhm,
baseball related thing, then I totally understand. But if it's something like that, then to me that's just stupid. So if it's related to the whole steroid biogenesis stuff, and Dempster didn't even say anything after his post game press conference. He said, I'm more upset that I blew the lead than I hit A-Rod unintentionally. So
yeah.
that was pretty interesting. But yeah, it was good to see a little Red Sox Yankees flavor back in these parts. So hey, let's switch gears once again and now go on to a guy that we just talked about not too long ago, Jake Peavy. He had kind of an interesting next 2 starts after his debut in a Red Sox uniform. Kansas City, he goes in, he gets lit up. He throws let's see, he gives up 6 earned runs in 5+ innings, 2 of which were homers. And then in his next start after that, he goes to Toronto, pitches another 6+ and gives up 2 earned runs. He pitched well, but he faltered late. He allowed back-to-back singles to Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion. I was actually at this game. I watched it live. It was pretty interesting with watching all these Canadians. I don't think they
Hmm.
really understand baseball as much as we do, but they loved it. And yeah, it was just it was one of those things where Peavy, to me, he pitched. That was his second best. I mean, obviously, he's only pitched 3 games in a Red Sox uniform, but besides his debut, that was his best
Yeah.
outing, and he still lost because the Red Sox couldn't get any offense going.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to for the Red Sox when offense is struggling to win these close games, but they had chances to muster home at least a couple more runs. In most of these outings, they just leave runners on base. They left 12 runners on base in the finale against the Blue Jays, where they lost that game too. So
It's just been a case of squandering opportunities late in games. You have guys in scoring position. Last night, I can't think off the top of my head, but I know they had guys in scoring position. At third base, they stranded a runner last night. There was another time late in the ball game where they had another runner in scoring position. They just couldn't get these guys in, and it's becoming a pattern now where the pitching is struggling and the offense is struggling, and I think that's a big contributing factor to why the team as a whole has had such a crappy month.
yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're not hitting with runners in scoring position, especially when you started off the season so hot, like especially in late in games with 11 walk-offs. Now the Rays are catching up. They have 10 walk-offs with 2 this week, so maybe some home magic after this 6-game road trip against interleague play where the Red Sox are 9-3. So this could be a big stepping stone, like especially if they do good against San Fran and move on to the Dodgers, and luckily they missed Clayton Kershaw, so that
Right,
might
right.
help out a little bit. So
Right. Yeah. No. And this Dodgers team has been incredibly hot. They obviously went on that 42-9 run. And speaking of the Giants, though, I mean they're not the same caliber team that won the World Series a year ago. I mean, I was at AT&T earlier in the year. I watched a Giants and Nationals game. This Giants team is nowhere close to what they were a
yeah,
year ago. So
their
they should be able to
pitching
go
is
in
not
there.
even close to what it was. So
So yeah, I mean, I feel fairly confident. Again, they're on the road. The Red Sox have been struggling, so I hope that they can start to turn things around here. And it'll be interesting to see what happens on this road trip. But one thing that I do want to ask you, Brian, is if the Rays weren't struggling too this month, can you just imagine how different the division would look right now? The Rays would probably have a 3-game lead.
the same thing with the Red Sox. The Red Sox could have like a 6-7 game lead if they played well. Well,
Yeah,
when the Rays lost that
other,
6 or 7 straight. So
exactly, other side of the coin. It's like it could have been either one. It's like you're either missing out on a 6-game lead or you're lucky that you don't have a 4-game deficit. So
hmm
it's just something that they've got to figure out because if they keep losing like this, it's going to be another 2011 thing where they just slowly slip out of contention. And let's hope
luckily,
that
there's
doesn't
2 wild
happen.
cards now.
Exactly, they have the second wild card that they can cling their hopes on. But that would be a massive disappointment though after the way they got off to after the start they got off to. But one guy who has not been struggling since returning to the major leagues, Will Middlebrooks, your boy Brian, he's been on fire since
Yeah,
coming back.
12 for 26, has those 4 walks in 8 games. That's the big thing. His approach at the plate has been opposite field. I've seen a lot of line drives the opposite way. The home run last night
Hmm.
was to the opposite way. He hit it right on the line, and that double last night was off a right-hander. He hit a double in the 8th and was on third base, but Jacoby couldn't drive him in. So. The big thing is that his approach at the plate, like his home run was off a lefty, which is what they need. They need someone who can hit lefties out of the ballpark. So
Hmm. And one thing that you just touched on that I kind of want to go back to is you said his plate discipline has improved and he's walking more. I think that's absolutely 100% accurate. I mean, in his first 53 games, Will Middlebrooks had 9 walks, but since coming back, he has 4 walks in 8 games. So
hmm
while it's still an incredibly small sample size, he's showing a little bit more plate discipline. He's seeing more pitches, and I think that's a good start.
yeah, he's. I mean, sure, some of his base hits have been swinging at first pitches, but later in the games, he's seen 4 or 5 pitches. He struck out looking a couple times. Once against Kuroda, it was a nasty pitch inside that he should have swung at, but he didn't think it would go back over the plate. It looked like, but yeah. I mean, if he keeps this up, if he stays hot for 6 weeks, he could help the Red Sox. I mean, he helped them yesterday get the 6-3 lead, and
Hmm.
but that vanished because the pitching was atrocious.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess the hope for all of us here is, if he can regain his 2012 form, where he was pretty much. Now, let's be honest. In the AL, Mike Trout was the runaway winner for
Yeah.
AL Rookie of the Year, but he wasn't far behind in the sense that he would have probably finished second or third.
Yeah, especially like the power, well, right hand power is hard to find, and he was, I mean, before he got hit by that Esmail Rogers pitch, which
Mm.
was kind of funny because he actually faced Esmail Rogers in Toronto this past week, and I believe he got hit on like the thigh by one of the Toronto pitchers. So, I mean, it's kind of scary to see a player who just came back up and is looking good get hit. But yeah,
Obviously now he looks like he's more confident in the play at the plate. He's swinging a better bat. He's made some minor adjustments, I'm sure, with his swing while down in AAA, trying to work his way back. I was listening to WEI a week ago, and they were talking about how sometimes when you're a young kid, you come up and you have instant success, which is what happened to him in
yep,
2012. You start to take things for granted, and I'm not saying that I'm not challenging Will Middlebrooks' work ethic, because I don't know how hard he works in the offseason. I mean,
yeah,
I bet he works his ass off. All I'm saying is that sometimes guys can just kind of get a little complacent and say, you know what, I'm here to stay. And they don't realize that if they don't, produce, they can be sent right back down. I think it was sort of a wake-up call for Will Middlebrooks that, you know what, you got to continue to keep working every day because you never know when you could lose your job. And when Jose Iglesias was here, I think that was a big thing that he was kind of looking over his shoulder. Man, with Stephen Drew, coming back soon. This was when Drew was stuck on the DL. And Jose Iglesias could play third. This kind of might become a thing where they kind of get more playing time. And with me struggling, I might get bumped out to either a platoon situation or the bench from third base. Now that Jose Iglesias is gone, that's not a worry. But with Xander Bogaerts coming up, should he be looking over his shoulder at Xander?
I mean, Bogarts only has 9 games in the minors at third base, so I mean, I see occasional reps there. I see more Bogarts as most of the other Red Sox media members think. He's going to be a utility guy. So he'd go in like for Stephen Drew at short against lefties, and with Mike Napoli struggling and interleague play, and Ortiz can't be there every day, you could see maybe Middlebrooks at first occasionally because he got some work in, but not like too much, and then have Middlebrooks at first, Bogarts at third against righties. Um, I mean, it's really tough to say like what they'll do. They just want to see what the young kid can do against major league competition. So
No, I would say that if Middlebrooks can continue to build on what he's done since coming back and maybe try to kind of get back to what he was in 2012, he has nothing to worry about because Xander Bogaerts, although he can play
hmm
third base, is a shortstop. So, with Stephen Drew coming off the books after this year, I think, if Xander Bogaerts shows that he is a Major League Baseball player, we could roll with, those two on the left side with Middlebrooks at third and Xander Bogaerts at shortstop. So if I'm Will Middlebrooks, I'm just
hmm
worried about what I got to do. I'm not worried about what, Xander Bogaerts is doing because, as you mentioned, he does
yeah,
not have a ton of experience at third base. While he can play the position competently, that's not his natural position. So if I'm Will Middlebrooks, I wouldn't worry about it.
yeah. I mean, Bogarts isn't like Jose Iglesias good at short or and doesn't have that. I mean, he has a pretty good arm, but he's athletic. He rushes. He's young. He rushes throws still. Like that's going to be the tough part, seeing how he
Yeah.
handles playing at the major league level with all the
Yeah,
stress put on you, especially in Boston.
right.
So
Right, no, based on what I've heard and seen about Xander Bogaerts, I just say he has a steady glove and he carries a big stick. That's the way I describe him. He's a hitter first, and I wouldn't say he has definitely not as much range at shortstop as Jose Iglesias, but he is a competent shortstop. So
Hmm.
now that we have him here at the major league level, if not tonight, like I said, sometime in the next few days, we will get to see him, in every facet of the game, and it'll certainly be interesting.
Yeah,
So going back to Mike Napoli, you just referenced him just a second ago. He's obviously had his struggles. He had a big home run in Toronto, which actually extended that game. They ended up losing anyways, but that was a pretty big
yeah.
moment for Mike Napoli with his struggles lately. I mean, he's been striking out a ton. And over the last couple of days now, he hasn't been in the lineup because he's battling plantar fasciitis. They have Daniel Navas starting at first base with Johnny Gomes in left field. Is a DL stint possible for Mike Napoli?
Well, Buster Olney last night said it was quite the possibility, especially like with the trip coming up with interleague play. You need to have as many people like who can play certain positions as possible. It's pointless to have an injured player if he's not going to play for a week. So, I mean, David Ortiz is supposed to start 2 of the 3 games at first. I mean, you can't take that bad out of the lineup, but the Giants' offense has been really hot. So that's going to be tough to deal with. Hopefully, Lester can right the ship, like throw a big game. I mean, it's going to be tough to see these pitchers hit, but Lester's a pretty solid hitter. Hopefully, he can lay a bunt down. Some of these players can lay
Yeah,
bunts down, but
yeah. A couple of years ago, John Lester almost hit like a home run in AT&T. I think it might have been. I think the bases were loaded. It was almost a grand slam, if I
he
remember
hit
correctly.
he
So,
hit he hit one at Citizens Bank a couple of years ago also. So
oh, so
they
there
were
you
taking
go.
they were taking they were taking BP the last homestand on the Sunday. John Lackey hit a home run. So did Lester. So
Hey, these guys are not just pitchers; they're baseball players. They can do it all.
exactly.
So yeah, so no, going back to Mike Napoli though, I think this is a guy though that you want to get going. I mean, you saw what he was able to do in April and May, and we thought he was going to continue it for the rest of the season. And historically, he's had better second halves than he's had first halves.
Yeah.
So and he's a guy that has big numbers in September. So if I'm the Red Sox, if I'm John Farrell, I want Mike Napoli coming back, and I kind of want to get him in the lineup to say, hey, come on, big fella, we need you to get going here, buddy. We need you down the stretch in September when we need big runs late in games, when we'll need you in October. And so far now, it's been about a 2-month stretch where he's given you absolutely nothing. And it kind of just makes you wonder, well, can they just rely on his past numbers in September, or do they just have to go with the hot bat? So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, especially Napoli was the 5 hitter right behind Ortiz. Who
Hmm.
I would say the best thing to do right now is either put Drew behind him, behind Ortiz, or like I'm not gonna say Will Middlebrooks yet because he's just getting his feet wet again. But I say bat Napoli ninth. Not in the coming 2 series because the pitcher hits ninth, but when Napoli returns, hit him like 8th or 9th. Don't hit him higher up in the order until he fixes everything. I mean, maybe it could be the plantar fasciitis that is making him struggle, or something like that. But
Or who
I
knows? It may be the hip. We just don't know right now
yeah, well, I
what it could
think
be.
they would be more cautious if it was the hip thing. But
Right, right. Yeah, no, it's they dropped him lower in the lineup. He seemed to respond somewhat well to it, with that home run.
yeah,
But
for the first game in that hole he hit a home run in the ninth, but that's about it. He had a
right,
couple strikeouts in that game, so
right. So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him go on the DL. But continuing now with this depressing negative trend of guys that are struggling, Brian, Dustin Pedroia is another guy that comes to mind.
yeah, Pedroia, this month, I mean, he's doing better than he did July, but this month he's hitting 260 with only 5 RBI and 3 doubles. He has no home runs this month. His OPS is only 643. Compare that to Middlebrooks' 8 games. Middlebrooks has a 1200 OPS. So
Hey,
which
hey, it's
is
eight
like
games. It's eight
ridiculous.
games. Let's
But
not get carried away here. Yeah, no, that is pretty
well,
crazy
yeah,
regardless. Yeah.
Pedroia has 17 or 18 games. Oh, I think it was like no, it's 17 games this month that he only has 5 RBI. And he was a big catalyst in April, May, and June. In
Yeah, and
July,
after and
he
it
struggled
was
way mightily.
oh yeah, right after the All-Star break was when it started, and I kind of let up. I mean, all of July, as you just said. I mean, 216 in the month of July, 623
Mm,
OPS. So he's really, another guy. I hate to play the game of, oh, is he hurt? Or, I mean, we know he was banged up from day one, sliding into first base head
yeah,
first. Who knows? I mean, he's a guy that you literally will not know if he's hurt because you won't hear a peep out of him. He'll just keep playing. And so I mean, with the guy, Dustin Pedroia is so talented that it kind of makes me wonder if he's playing through something. Now, I don't want to just start, making phantom injuries that maybe he's just struggling plain out. Maybe that's just what it is.
yeah,
But Dustin Pedroia is another guy. I mean, he's the spark plug for this offense, and he needs to get going. And I think a big reason the Red Sox as a whole are struggling right now is because of Dustin Pedroia. He's just not producing offensively right now. And he's had his moments here and there where he's collected multi-hit games and things like that. But for the most part, he has been not as bad as Mike Napoli, but he has been a non-factor too many times with the bat recently.
yeah. I mean, the other day he fouled a pitch off the foot that he broke.
Yeah, yeah,
The
that brought back really bad memories.
Yeah, so I mean, it. I mean, he could use a couple of days off, which is probably. I mean, Stephen Drew could play second. I think he's had a few games there in the past, so maybe they could put Bogarts at short, Drew at second during this interleague series on the road and see what happens.
I wouldn't be
That's what
surprised to see that.
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that. He's played in every game except for one this season, and for anyone, I mean, even Dustin Pedroia, that's a lot. You need maintenance days and things like that. So
hmm
maybe they'll wait for a scheduled off day and just give him a day off right before that.
Yeah, well, the Red Sox have a lot coming up. They have every Monday except for Labor Day off, um, because they do have 4 games in the books um, over the Rays and most other teams. They played like the most games in Major League Baseball. So,
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that. Going back to the pitching, Brian, I do want to touch on Felix Dubron, who has been really impressive this season, but he has been less than impressive in his last few starts.
especially his last start, 8 earned runs against the Yankees after straight quality starts over his career against them. He flat out dominated the Yankees until his last start. I mean, you can blame that on the addition of Alfonso Soriano, who had a humongous week for the Yankees. Um, but his start before that against Kansas City, he had 3 earned runs in less than 5 innings, but it still kept his streak alive at 16 straight starts, allowing 3 earned runs or less. But yeah, he's struggled a little bit. I mean, maybe he's hitting that innings total that like uh, he had to be rested last season
Yeah, the
for.
fatigue factor set in.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably he has more innings. He'll probably have more innings than last year, but he was used as a reliever for most of his career. Well, for most of his minor league career. So, I mean, they could rest him some, but with the Dempster struggles and I mean, we could see Henry Owens up because he's been masterful, but
I think that's why the Red Sox are really hoping and praying that some of these guys step up. Because when the rosters expand, that'll give them a lot of flexibility to maybe throw a no-name, or at least guys that haven't had any major league experience into the starting rotation, throw them into the fire against a team that the Red Sox should supposedly have no trouble against.
like the White
Obviously, that's
Sox.
easier said than done. Yeah, obviously that's easier said than done in September, though, when you're in the middle of a pennant race and it's a tight
hmm
division and you want your real starters going out there. But yeah, as you mentioned, the fatigue factor I think is a big deal because that happened to him last year where he kind of faltered late in the season. He had a great first half into July, August, and that's really when it happened. This is happening again, so um, a lot to again be concerned about, but I don't yet want to panic because this Red Sox team is capable of turning things around like that. So, we'll see what happens. But I mean, man, this is a really negative show we got on here because the next thing we're going to talk about is Jared Saltalamacchia. Now he's struggling. He's doing well offensively. He's had a good year, but this is about him throwing out runners. How many bases were stolen on Jared Saltalamacchia last night? 4 by the
Four,
Angels.
yeah.
So this is really. I mean, this season Jared Saltalamacchia, Brian, is throwing out 18.7% of his runners. 18.7%. David Ross, by comparison, was throwing out just under 35% when he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to throw out a runner. I mean, you look at Matt Wieters, who's really good at it, and then you look at Saltalamacchia, who a couple years ago couldn't even throw back to the pitcher's mound. So, I mean, he's come a long way. I mean, he still has some improvement. He got lucky on Saturday. There were a bunch of stolen bases against him in that game too, and the umpire missed it, but he called him out. But Soriano was safe at second. I mean, maybe that's one of those challenge plays that will happen into the next year if it's approved.
Yeah.
Which that will be interesting to see. Just like the everything.
How challenges are used.
Yeah, they're like, will they throw a flag like the NFL? That's what I want to see. Like, because there's been plays that I've noticed over the past week that you could throw a flag, and like, the Red Sox lucked out. Mike Karp was thrown out by like a foot on his stolen base, or I think it was a stolen base attempt.
Just going back to Jared Saltalamacchia,
Yeah.
As you mentioned, he's matured behind the plate in terms of how to call a game and things like that, but his ability to just throw guys out is embarrassing. Inability, rather. You just see he's not just failing to throw runners out, it's how he's failing. He's missing wide of the bag on both sides. I mean, Stephen Drew last night had to dive for a couple balls just to keep them from going into center field. It's one thing to just fail at throwing a guy out, but he's just missing so badly, and this really makes me wonder, man, come September, come October, late in ball games, when you absolutely have to gun down a runner, can he do it? And right now, I'm not confident in that. I don't think he can.
Well, I think it's the pitcher's duty not to allow those fast guys to get on. Have the slow guys get on. That's it. Like if there's a fast runner, strike him out. Pitch for contact. Just get him out somehow. If it's a slow guy, be like, all right, I can be careful with you.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why I'm all the more reason to look forward to David Ross coming back. As you mentioned before the show, you and I were talking. He's expected to be activated today.
I would think he gets the start tonight. That's what I would say because of the late night last night and leaving at 10 o'clock this morning. He might get the start tonight, but that's just
right. Also, David Ross didn't fly out with the team today.
David Ross, John Lester, and Jake Peavy all flew out yesterday. So
yeah, that's all the more reason to believe that David Ross may be getting the start tonight. I do expect him to be in the lineup as well tonight in place of Jared Saltalamacchia. Now, just kind of before we segue to the next thing, I do want to just throw it out there that Jared Saltalamacchia is having a good year offensively. That was just his struggles behind the plate, which have been embarrassing.
Yeah,
so
he's been working on that a lot too. I mean, yeah. So he's been working on it. I mean, it's all a mental thing. So
I mean, that's something that I think we'll see David Ross play a bigger role when we get to some of those big games, especially maybe as a defensive replacement when we have 1 or 2 run games in the 7th inning in October. So, all right, final topic. Red Sox are in San Francisco for the first of a 3-game set tonight. It'll be John Lester versus Tim Lincecum, and I just want to say a couple years ago we had this matchup. And it was a marquee matchup. Can we still call this a marquee matchup here in 2013?
I mean, Tim Lincecum did have a no-hitter this year. Scherzer's record is 6-12. They're both like pitchers that should be good, but sometimes have inconsistencies with their control. Tim Lincecum walks a lot of guys. Lester can walk a lot of guys. But no, in 2010, the series finale, Lester pitched a complete game. And Lincecum only lasted 3 innings in a 5-1 Red Sox victory. So, sure that was the game that no one wants to speak of because Pedroia broke his foot in that game. But yeah,
I cried for a week. But yeah, no, like just to piggyback off what you're saying, I mean these guys are still capable of having big games and getting it done. But I was looking at their numbers last night, and they're not pretty. They both have ERAs in the 4s. They both have, I believe, under 10 wins this season. So, it's still a sexy matchup, though, because Tim Lincecum is a two-time Cy Young Award winner. He has a no-hitter this year. John Lester, to me, is still capable of having big games. Um, but it doesn't have that same. A couple years ago, I remember when John Lester versus Tim Lincecum was coming up, I had that game circled on my calendar. Today, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's basically what the Red Sox starters are right now. Like PV, John Lester, and John Lackey are like the mold of the same pitcher. They're both guys who can throw a bunch of innings, can get the job done, but sometimes they struggle. Like PV has struggles with the home run ball.
Yeah.
John Lackey has the same thing, and John Lester has trouble with being wild at times. I mean, tonight's game starts at 10:15. It's on ESPN and NESN, so it's a national broadcasted game. But in our area, we won't get it because we live in Boston, so we have to watch NESN. But
But stuck with Don Ursula. That's too bad. But no, I love Don. But but no. But the thing is, as you said, earlier in the show, this is a struggling Giants team. So hopefully Lester can just go in there, pound the strike zone against these guys. Obviously, got to be careful with guys like Buster Posey, but
Hunter Pence.
Hunter Pence, obviously Kung Fu Panda's in there too. But all those other guys, just pound the zone, go after them, and see what happens. I mean, you're in San Francisco,
Yeah.
you're on the road, but
It's a big ballpark too, so
it's a big ballpark. It's a beautiful ballpark. I love 18.
mhm.
But yeah, so we'll see what happens tonight. But as I mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised to see both John Lester and Tim Lincecum chase from this game after just 5 innings or less, because both have had pretty crap years. Although Lincecum has had a little bit more of a bounce back than Lester as of late. So as Brian mentioned, that starts at 10:15 tonight, both on ESPN and NESN. And should be, and I was going to say should be a good one, but not for either of those two pitchers. I think this will be an offensive game. We'll see, though. Anyways, that was Red Sox Weekly on BostonSportsRadio.net. Thanks for checking us out. He's Brian Roach. I'm Ashish Sharma, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy.